Hello and welcome to my channel. We made it, y'all. We made it through one of the most stressful and confusing and dynamic summers that we as a people have known in a long time. I think this summer was the most dramatic summer that we've ever had outside of the summer of 2020. And by we, I'm speaking of as a human collective. I know that different people's lives follow different paths. You might have had a very chill summer. You might have had a very boring summer. You might have had a wonderful, enchanting, lovely summer. But on a global scale, as a collective, that was kind of a lot going on. So I decided to break down the vibe of this summer into three parts: Barbie, Breakups, and Beyonce. And I'm going to talk about the breakups first. At the beginning of this summer, actually, over on my Patreon, I announced that this was going to be my summer to try and get back into dating again. Get some good stories, get some experiences under my belt for the plot. And when I told my patrons this, they responded like,
"No, God! No, God, please, no! No! No!"
I think overall, in general, people who have been supporting me for a long time, whether it's here or over there, were exhausted, maybe by the secondhand trauma of me attempting to have a love life. And I could not have actually been in more unison with them on that point. When it really came down to it, unless it was going to yield me some different results or there was going to be a different pathway to what I wanted to experience, I wasn't really interested either. In fact, I really wanted to take the summer to spend time alone. And so that's what I ended up doing. And I picked the perfect summer to do it because this turned out not to be a summer of love, but a summer of breakups. If you happen to be in astrology at all, you will know that we were experiencing one of those cute little retrogrades for the most of the summer. We got a Venus retrograde, which is when the planet Venus, the planet that rules over love and relationships and justice and harmony, decided to, or was moving backwards. And it didn't move backwards for 1 month, not for 2 months. It was almost for 2.5 months, which means that this was a summer where people were asked to examine their personal relationships, examine their romantic relationships, and examine how they had been treated in situations and see if they wanted to do something about it. That is why I believe that this was a summer of the divorce. It seemed like every other week you looked up and there was another celebrity getting divorced. And it was never for a ridiculous or unknown reason. I think in all the divorces, what we know as an audience, it made sense. I think one of the least surprising divorces was the Britney Spears and Sam Asghari divorce. In my opinion, that relationship never made any sense from the outside looking in. He always seemed very opportunistic to me. I always kind of give a side eye to anybody really in her life who is in a romantic relationship with her because there is so much baggage that comes with that. And especially if you're dealing with a hypogamous situation, like Sam did not have nearly as much as Britney did. He did not bring nearly as much to the table. So it was really like, guy, what are you doing here? And I kind of felt that way the entire time. I know that initially the diehard Britney fans were very, very against anybody speaking out when it came to her getting married to him in the first place. I remember Octavia Spencer, I think that's her name. Octavia Spencer, yeah. There's an Octavia Butler and Octavia Spencer. If I got it wrong, I'll put the right name up here. I know she's an Academy Award-winning Black actress, but I have a headache, so please excuse me. But I know Octavia spoke out and she was like, make sure you get a prenup. And people were like, what? That's wrong. Why would you say that way? And it turns out Britney did have an ironclad prenup, so she is protected in that separation. For as much as we know, right? We never really know as the audience. Yeah, that was one of the least surprising divorces that I saw. And honestly, I was surprised it didn't happen sooner. Now, this summer was not just about people breaking apart. It was also about people coming back together. There were friendships that I saw, reunions that I saw of celebrities that hadn't seen together in a while. And I was like, oh, they're hanging out again. Like Selena Gomez and her friend Francia Raisa. I think that's how you say her name. If you don't know anything about this story, basically Francia gave Selena a kidney a couple years ago, and then there was some fallout about that. Again, as the audience, we don't really know exactly what went into their fallout, but we know that they did the unfollowing of each other on social media, which normally indicates a relationship has ended. And then this year, they were refollowing each other during the retrograde is when it happened, refollowing each other, posting pictures of themselves on nights out, posting themselves in matching shoes. Selena made sure to do a big birthday tribute for Francia on her birthday. And all in all, it seemed like, okay, when a union was meant to get back together or when there was maybe love that wasn't lost between two people. They just needed to have a conversation. This summer could be good for that too. But in general, starting new things, starting new relationships, this was not the summer for it. I also want to talk a little bit about all the strikes we had, all the lawsuits. Every time you turned around, somebody was taking someone to court about something. I think one of the most surprising ones, the one that shook at me the most, was a lawsuit that Lizzo's backup dancers had when it came to her situation and what was going on with them on tour. I think it was the most surprising because then it came out that they actually had been recorded on camera saying how much they loved Lizzo and loved being on tour with her. And so again, on the outside, we don't really know, but what we did get to see with that was how quickly social media was like, is this who she is? We're done with her. And a lot of people unfollowed her. And, then there was a whole thing about Beyonce saying or not saying her name on stage. I mean, it was very, very, very messy. But this was the summer where people were looking into themselves, looking into their relationships and reviewing what had happened to them. And it wasn't only people that everybody liked before bad news came out about them. We also had the villains from situations past come forward and say like, hey, this is what really went down, such as Nene Leakes. Now, I won't say she's a villain, but I will say she had been dismissed from Real Housewives of Atlanta, and there's been no invitation, as far as we know, for her to come back. She is involved in legal situations with them now, and there are some salty feelings about her for people that are still on the cast. So definitely it was time for her to speak her piece, and she did. Speaking of villains who got a chance to tell their story, we also had Derek Jackson come forward and finally say, hey, this was my side of that. What's interesting about Derek Jackson coming forward, though, is I don't think anybody still had the energy to give his side of the story. I was staying away from that whole thing after everything that happened with the Danae Jackson interview and kind of like the fallout and, her actions after that. I was staying away from anything Jackson family related. And then when I saw he went on and told his side of the story, I was like, you know what? I'm happy for you that you got to say something, in a sense that I'm happy for anyone who feels they've been misunderstood and they get to speak out. But I won't be listening to that or giving that any of my energy. And I feel like a lot of people also kind of took that route. I'll say it like this. The normal people that I was expecting to do like reaction videos or commentary on that interview, they didn't do it. They sort of stayed away from it. And I think it's just, sometimes we kind of lose energy, especially with someone like Derek, who is always talking about himself, always. And I think it's very hard for him to be redeemed in this situation. So people sort of stayed away from it. Again, tell your story, but you can't always expect people to still have space for it or want to extend you empathy because of whatever you've been through. Speaking of people not having space or wanting to extend empathy, you had Raquel from Vanderpump Rules. Listen, I didn't know anything about Vanderpump Rules because I'm not a reality show watcher at all. My first reality show to sit all the way through was Love is Blind, and I'm going to be doing my reaction to After the Altar in my next video, but I'm not a reality fan. And so I did not watch Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. I did not watch Vanderpump Rules. I only found out about this with Scandal, and it was such a big deal, and the condemnation of her was so swift and so immediate and so harsh that I was like, what is going on? And I tried to watch a little bit of Vanderpump. I think I made it to like season 2, episode 4. I really can't do, what's the girl's name? Her name, the blonde girl from the early seasons. I'll put her up here. I forget her name, but I really can't do it. I can't take it. It's just, I can't watch it. I really can't watch any of it. Like, it's not enjoyable to me. But I did try and go in and get a little bit of information. And then I tried to watch Scandal, but that reunion to me was, they might as well have marched Rachel out in front of a firing squad. Like there was no point after a while in still watching it because you knew she's just here to be a target of anger and hate. And here's the thing, feel how you want to feel. But then I think we also have to question, what is it about us as human beings that we think that it's okay to televise something like that? For me, it goes back to our days or whatever, the early days of human civilization, when people wanted to go to the Colosseum and see 2 gladiators battle it out. That's what it appeared like to me. They just wanted to go and see somebody. If you watched that and you enjoyed it, you just wanted to see somebody ripped apart. And I think we also tend to project our own experiences. So if you've ever been backstabbed by a friend, like let's say they cheated on somebody behind your back, if you've ever had a cheating boyfriend, if you've ever felt like a woman scorned or a man scorned, it feels good to watch somebody get ripped apart, but it doesn't make it right. I felt like the reunion was violent and just out of order. So I was interested to see what Raquel Rachel had to say. Let's just call her Raquel, okay? Even though she's going by Rachel now, she was on Raquel on the show, so we'll call her Raquel. Let's call her Rachel. It was interesting to see what Rachel had to say as far as somebody who had lived through that and then gone to a mental health institution. And it was also interesting because of who she decided to talk to. Bethany Frankel is a notorious reality TV villain, like has said the craziest stuff to people. And she was like, they treated you really inhumane. And again, I'm not super plugged into all this. I kind of got my opinions and data from what other people on the internet were saying. But overall, this summer was so interesting because you got to hear so many different stories, so many different people spill their tea, so many different people's relationships, and so many different people. I mean, it was a lot. It was like every day there was something new going on. And I was relieved. We finally got to Labor Day weekend and the Venus retrograde was over. We're still in a Mercury retrograde. That's going to be over in about a week or so. But that Venus retrograde was brutal. And so I was happy to see the Summer of Breakups go. The other phenomenon that kind of swept the summer was Barbie. Here's the thing about me. I could not have cared less initially when it came to Barbie. I was not a Barbie girl growing up. In fact, we weren't allowed to have Barbies because the other houses we went to and played with, they had them. My mom always said they've got too many parts, too many little shoes. She foresaw the nightmare it would be to have to clean all of that up. So we were not allowed to have Barbies. I loved playing with Barbie. There were hours of my childhood that were spent playing with Barbie at other people's houses, but I was never like super impacted by her, which is why when it came out a couple years later that so many people had an issue with Barbie and the image that she put out for little girls, I was like, y'all was paying attention to that for real? All right. Because I wasn't affected by it in that way. But what I'm learning more and more, and what I hope will be maybe the gospel of my life, is just because you're not affected by something in some way does not mean that other people aren't affected by it. Like everybody is affected by things in their own way. So yes, I was not at all very affected by Barbie, but I was aware that other people were like super into her and therefore very excited when this movie was announced. But I think it's really interesting that they kept it under wraps. What the movie was going to be about, we didn't know. There were no critics there was like a criticism embargo on the movie for a while where critics could not publish their real feelings about the movie or what was going on. And I also remember Barbenheimer, where Barbie and Oppenheimer were coming out on the same day. I had no idea what Oppenheimer was about, had to look it up. Still haven't seen it. But I did see Barbie, and I'm one of the people that got suckered into the movie because of the press tour, because of all of the different stops whenever they would premiere the movie in different cities and the way that the girls were putting it down when it came to the looks and the fashion. I think whoever styled Margot Robbie and got her ready for those red carpets deserves an Academy Award. Like, you don't have to maybe give anything else to the rest of the movie, which I'm not saying they shouldn't, because the movie was actually kind of excellent. But that styling specifically for those red carpet tours was amazing. I also loved seeing actresses like Issa Rae, step out and get on the red carpet and be treated like a doll in a lot of ways. I think it was really important as far as representation is concerned. It was also really important, I think, for Issa Rae herself, because this summer I went back and I read her novel, Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl, or her memoir. And one person who would probably understand a lot of my content would be her. Well, a lot of my initial content about like self-esteem and self-perception. I was really surprised when I read that, just how similar a lot of our summations and experiences were when we were growing up as little Black girls in predominantly white neighborhoods, and how it affected how we thought about how we looked. And there were a lot of similarities. And so when I was reading that book, she also talks a lot about her issues with body, how she felt about her body and her weight. And she even made some comments when the movie came out that working on this movie helped her a lot with her own body image, And so I'd love to see her in the looks, even though according to Issa, she doesn't like pink. She looked amazing in everything. And yeah, I was really pulled in by the marketing. And then when I saw the movie, I was confused because before I went to go see it, criticisms had started coming out about the movie. People had started being upfront about what they liked and didn't like. And there was a lot of pushback from conservatives, and I couldn't figure it out. There was a lot of, this Barbie's not for kids, and this isn't what people grew up with, and this and this. And the whole movie is about a product of a system gaining consciousness through the process of self-actualization. Why is that a bad thing? I could not figure out what the uproar was. And as far as it not being appropriate for children, I'm a big child. I'm very goofy. So slapstick comedy, people saying the wrong things when they should say, something else. Shows like Angie Tribeca, if you remember that show a couple years ago, movies like The Naked Gun, like all of that comedy really, really speaks to me on a spiritual level. So when I was watching the movie and you had Will Ferrell in there just acting up, Ryan Gosling is a clown. That fool is a clown. And it's crazy to me how long we regarded him as like he's a heartthrob. Ryan is a whole clown. He's a fool. So you had him acting up. You had various other things happening. If I had been a little kid and I wasn't able to grasp the bigger concept of the movie, I would have just been cracking up at how silly everybody was. I couldn't figure out what the pushback was, but it comes down to people not liking things that they have attached themselves to, presented in new ways. Similar to the pushback that The Little Mermaid got initially. She can't look like this because this is not what we're attached to. And so in general, I was just very surprised and confused when I went to go see the movie. I thought it was delightful. I really enjoyed it. And I did cry. I think a lot of people did cry, or there were some people on social media who were like, who cried? But like I said, the movie is about gaining consciousness through the process of self-actualization, experiencing things that bring you into your own alignment with yourself. And if you've ever been through that process, no matter what your gender is, no matter what your race is, no matter whatever, then you remember it. And you remember that sometimes it's painful and it's confusing and it's foundation shaking. And then I think as a woman, having this relationship to this topic through the concept of what it means to be a woman outside of the male gaze. What does it mean to be a woman when I don't have to perform for men? That was a really powerful concept of the movie. And as far as perform for men, I just mean perform my roles as they are required of me within a patriarchal society. That's what I mean. The song that Billie Eilish wrote for the movie, What Was I Made For? That was so powerful. There were a lot of really powerful moments in that movie and a lot of really powerful things that happened on social media because of that movie, specifically this concept of girlhood and being what it means to be a girl. And, for me, if I can define it, it's once again, being who you are outside of the gaze of the patriarchy. Now, I do think that sometimes the concept of girlhood can get a little culty when we start talking about who's a girl's girl and who's not a girl's girl. And this is what a girl dinner looks like. And this is what those types of things can get a little scary to me. But I recognize the place that they come from and why people feel they have to express themselves that way. But anyway, yes, the Barbie phenomenon was definitely a big part of this summer. I loved seeing all of the posts on social media of like friends going to see it together, dressed in their pink. And I did not dress in pink when I went to go see it. I was wearing a shirt and a hoodie and carrying some Kleenex with me because I was sick, but I really enjoyed it. And I feel like it was a really, really powerful player in a summer that was really big for women. And on that note, I want to talk about Beyonce. So when Beyonce first announced this tour that she was going on for Renaissance, us out there who were in the Beehive, I think we were like, girl, you gonna give us a tour and we ain't got no music video? We ain't got no visual? And I love that at one of the concert stops, she said,
You are the visual, baby.
that mama look, like, you stop talking to me about that. I think it was really surprising when she announced the tour because nobody really understood. I know I didn't really understand what it was going to look like at all. I had an idea of what, the Miss Carter were. I don't think I've ever known what any of her tours would look like, but this is the one I was confused at most. There was so much. There were so many different things. And when I went to go see it, because I did go see it, I was like, okay, she's kind of embodying this is what I think. Okay, she starts off, if you've seen the tour, she starts off real soft. You know, she's performing all of her ballads. She is giving us love. I'm Beyonce, the lover. And then she experiences a renaissance. And what I think is really interesting is when she begins this process, she becomes robotic in a sense and is transferred into outer space. We're going to say an elevated level of consciousness where she's now a robot. And so I think what that means is that she has realized that she's had to sacrifice a softer part of herself in order to become this other thing. She's always been very into having to be an alter ego in order to survive in the world, if you will. And now come to think of it, when I put it like that, I almost think her robotic phase is one step on the way to her full renaissance, which you get to see at the end of the show when she has the ball, which of course has been modeled after drag balls from queer communities. And I believe that that is where she gets to be her full self, where she's dancing, where she's encouraging people to party, where she's encouraging people to be all of themselves and all of the colors and identities that they come in. And I will probably never speak to Beyonce, and so I'll never be able to confirm that this is what the show is actually about. But regardless of whether or not I was confused, I will say it was a powerful show. I was looking forward to it for a long time. I mentioned in my comment section on my last video that I decided I wanted to travel to go see her. At first, I've said this before, I wanted to see a show in Europe, but I planned too late, didn't budget. And then I was like, you know what? I have never, ever been to the city of Miami, ever. When I was younger, I was scared to go because I heard about all the colorism and how tough it was in the clubs out there, and I didn't have enough self-esteem for all that. So I avoided it. And then when I got older, I heard about all the friendship breakups and all the chaos if you don't have Miami money. So I was like, ooh, I don't want to deal with that. And then of course there's the other part of it where it's like the place for an easy vacation, but ain't never experienced that. So there's no reason for me to go. And I was like, you know what? I've always been curious about it though. And so I think that's where I'm going to see Beyonce. And this was kind of a positive and kind of a negative. It was positive because I think it's really cool to see places that people have talked about and you finally get the chance to like view them for yourself. And it was negative because I don't do professional sports games. So the Miami Hard Rock Stadium ain't nothing to play with. Okay. So I'm in there and I'm looking up and I low-key had panic attack. There were so many people. It was so big. I was like, this is overwhelming. I really enjoyed my time. I wore an outfit that you would have never been able, you would not have told me I would ever wear something like this out of the house a couple years ago, but I felt like it was the vibe with the whole Renaissance theme, like dressing up in all the colors you can. I think what Beyonce created with this tour, as far as it being like a lookbook, when she said we are the visuals as her fans, she meant that. And the way people showed out with their outfits, like the custom made ones were crazy. I was just happy to do a little bit of something to be able to fit in. But outside of my outfit, the most exciting parts of the show for me were obviously the songs that I loved and I was looking forward to, but also when Blue Ivy came out. And I want to show you guys right now the video that I filmed when that little girl hit the stage. As you can see, I was super excited. When you start to see that video go crooked, please note that I was jumping up and down and my did pop out of my outfit. So I had to put that back in. But overall, it was a great experience. I cried. It's not hard for Beyonce to get me to cry. And I think I mentioned this in my last video, but I was really proud of her because before this tour happened, there was an outpouring of condemnation on that woman's name. Being in an arena of people who love her and who were lifting her up and lifting each other up because she's brought all of us together and brought so much joy to our lives all these years just made me really emotional because I really didn't know what type of experience I was going to have. I thought it was going to be like going to a women's clinic. Whenever you go in, maybe just for a wellness appointment, and there's people out in the front with their signs and you're just like, I'm just here for a checkup. I thought it was going to be like that, but it wasn't. It was a nice experience. It was a peaceful experience. It was a fun experience. I'm pissed that I didn't go to the LA show though, because what you mean Diana Ross came out? And I just know when she does Houston, she's going to have Kelly Rowland and Michelle with her. It's gonna be a Destiny Child reunion. I just know it. But I had my time, I had my experience, and I'm happy with that. I will also say though, Beyonce was definitely a part of this big summer we had for women, because I think her tour is set to gross over $1 billion. Then we also had Taylor Swift, who was on tour, who is also making a ton of money. And in a way, people are saying that women saved the economy this summer because they did these super popular, super successful tours. I'm not even going to talk about the fact that people tend to compare Beyonce and Taylor, and that some people have dared open their mouth and say that Beyonce is worse than Taylor, like the Taylor's better than Beyonce. I mean, I don't even want to go there. All I will say is I was proud to be in the number, proud to be in the audience, and proud to have that experience. Okay, that's my really quick rundown of this summer. Like I said before, it was one of the craziest and most chaotic summers on a macro scale, like watching what was happening on the world scale with celebrities or with certain events, because I think what's happening a lot of times on a bigger scale is often happening on a smaller scale as well. So if celebrities are divorcing and breaking up, it's probably happening a lot in our lives too as individuals. If celebrities are reuniting and rejoining and becoming friends again, then it's probably happening a lot with us too. If villains are coming out and telling their story, you probably had to hear from somebody you didn't want to hear from come out and try and tell their story to you. Or maybe you were the villain and you had a chance to tell your story. Whatever it was, that is my opinion of the last few months. What did you think? How was your summer? Please feel free to chime in the comments box below. And as always, thanks for watching.